Hello, friendos and bendos. It's me, Z, and I absolutely adore Wonder Woman. She's my favorite superhero, and I've read a countless number of her comics and watched tons of other media with her in it. So, it may come as a surprise to you that before making this video, I never actually watched either of the live-action DCEU Wonder Woman movies. Something about the thought of watching them was scary to me. A live-action movie meant her and her world were real as they could get without actually existing in real life. The thought of it being done wrong was terrifying. And even years after these movies have been released, and at least the first one got positive ratings, I still was too afraid to take the plunge. Until now. At the time of writing the script, I've just finished watching the first live-action Wonder Woman movie, and I have a lot of thoughts. I always have a lot of thoughts when it comes to Wonder Woman media, and I want to share those thoughts with you. So, put on your Amazonian bracelets and get yourself a nice bowl of ice cream. Let's overanalyze the Wonder Woman movie. Part 1. Is the movie even any good? Yeah, the movie's good. A solid 8 out of 10 in my opinion. I liked it a lot despite a few issues I had with the movie's plot and another myriad of issues I have with it as an adaptation. It's an enjoyable film and a serviceable origin story for a new Wonder Woman in a new continuity. It's not my favorite, but if this was your first exposure to Wonder Woman, I wouldn't be upset. But, as I said before, this is an analysis. I don't want to just give my general thoughts. I want to go through individual details of this movie to truly see what makes it tick and come out to a more nuanced conclusion than movie good. Because movies are an art form. They're trying to say something. Even the simplest of movies. Even the worst of movies. And adaptations, in my mind, are kind of like art squared, because they're both trying to say something and are trying to interpret what another piece of art is saying. And that interpretation can be a completely one-to-one retelling or incredibly different. So, not only is Wonder Woman 2017 trying to say something by itself, it's also trying to say something about Wonder Woman as a character, as a franchise, as a monolith. So, the question then is, what is it trying to say? Part 2. Let's begin at the beginning. The movie begins on the home of Wonder Woman and the Amazons, Themyscira, aka Paradise Island. And we spend the first roughly 40 minutes of the film on Themyscira before Wonder Woman leaves on her quest, and we never see the island again. While on the island, we get the backstory of the Amazons as told by Hippolyta to a young Diana. And as this is our first big exposition dump, I want to talk about what it sets up for this version of Wonder Woman. In the beginning, there were the gods, Zeus chief among them, and Zeus is attributed with being the sole creator of humanity. And this humanity was peaceful and good, until Ares, Zeus' son and the god of war, ruined that peace by creating conflict among the people. So, the other gods decided to create the Amazons, a race of women who would bring peace back to Earth. And peace did come, but only for a short time, before the Amazons were enslaved. The Amazons ended up freeing themselves, and in the meanwhile the gods went to war, Ares against every other one, and he killed them all except Zeus, who used the last of his power and his dying breath to cast out Ares, creating a weapon capable of killing him and giving it to the Amazon to protect on the hidden island of Themyscira. This is the DCEU origin of the Amazons. And I kinda fucking hate it. The first thing to note is who the story focuses on, because it's not actually the Amazons, it's Zeus. Zeus is the big guy, the main character of the story. He was responsible for creating humanity. His son corrupted them and then betrayed him and the other gods. Zeus was also the only god left alive by Ares' siege, or at least alive enough to be able to land the finishing blow. He gave the Amazons a weapon in case Ares came back. He created Themyscira, and the Amazons live on Themyscira in service of him and his final wish. If you were to only watch this movie, you'd think Zeus was the GOAT of Wonder Woman lore, when he's not. In the original Sensation Comics issue number 1, Zeus is nowhere to be seen in the origin of the Amazons. In fact, we don't even get told where the Amazons come from, just that they were the most powerful people of ancient Greece, and Hercules, the most powerful man, ego-wounded by the fact that there was a nation of women more powerful than him, stole Queen Hippolyta's protective girdle and enslaved the Amazons after putting them on the back foot. The Amazons then pray to Aphrodite, and she frees them and gives them a protected Paradise Island home, but forces them to wear their shackles for the rest of time, as a symbol that they must never be enslaved again. The story is simple. There's a race of strong women, a man is jealous of them and enslaves them, and the women manage to break free and reform the society away from the rest of the world. It isn't until Wonder Woman issue number 1 that we actually get an expanded origin and learn where the Amazons come from. It turns out that Aphrodite was their creator, and that's why she was their patron god. And she had created them in order to stop Ares, who sowed chaos and conquest across the earth and made women slaves. Ares, furious at this, inspired Hercules to fight the Amazons, and the rest of the story plays out the same as it did in Sensation Comics number 1. All of this was incredibly deliberate. William Moulton Marston, creator of Wonder Woman, made her to spread a feminist message. One of his most famous quotes is that Wonder Woman is psychological propaganda, and every detail of this comic was planned out. Ares was war, and Ares was the patriarchy, and Ares was the ruler of men, and through him there was strife on Earth. The Amazons were his antithesis, created by Aphrodite, the female goddess of love, to undo his work. Hercules, the most famous hero of all time, was reinterpreted as a villain, goaded by Ares into a jealous rage to enslave the Amazons. Hercules, the pinnacle of archetypal masculinity, was remade by Marston into the god of war's human weapon. Aphrodite, Ares, and Hercules are the most important characters of the story aside from the Amazons themselves, each representative of a different thing. Ares was the patriarchy, and Hercules was the men that the patriarchy used and molded to subdue women. Aphrodite was love, and the Amazons were her creation, powerful women who were enslaved by men before breaking their chains and being led by love to form a new society without pain or suffering. As the years went on, the story of the Amazons' origin would be retold over and over. George Perez, in his iconic, gold standard Wonder Woman run, added new details, but the core of the story stayed the same. Ares wanted to corrupt the world. The other male gods didn't give a shit, and it was up to the female gods to create the Amazons to stop him. Then you got Heracles and the enslavement and the freedom and the paradise. And this expanded lore would be the lore of the Amazons going forward in the comics, aside from in the New 52, but we don't talk about the New 52. Now, notice how I didn't say Zeus's name once during all of this, and that's because Zeus doesn't matter. He doesn't mean anything in the context of the message of the Amazons as characters. In fact, whenever Zeus is mentioned in any form of retelling of the origins of the Amazons, he's a giant prick who's against their creation. And why is that? Well, because Zeus is a man. While not a literal god of war, he, like Ares, still represents the patriarchy and violence and tyranny as he's king of the gods. To remake the origin of the Amazons and replace Aphrodite's role with Zeus goes against all of this theming. And to make the matter worse, the other gods aren't even talked about in the movie's flashback, aside from to say that Ares creamed them all and that they had some part in creating the Amazons. In this movie origin, the story of the Amazons is no longer about women versus patriarchy or love versus war. This is now the story of Zeus versus Ares, the king of the gods versus his asshole son. And Hercules isn't mentioned in this movie origin either. In fact, the Amazons aren't really focused on at all. Their enslavement isn't even elaborated upon. We go straight from them being created, to them making peace, to them freeing themselves from enslavement, without anything in between talking about who enslaved them or why they were enslaved. And Paradise Island is no longer a refuge for the Amazons. It's a vault to keep the weapon to kill Ares, in case he pops up again, and the Amazons are simply the relegated vault keepers. It's honestly sad. In the first big Wonder Woman production, her first live-action film, the origin of her people is remade and glossed over so that we can focus on the struggle between two men, with the Amazons just being a footnote. It's strange to say, but one of the first scenes in the Wonder Woman movie is honestly anti-Wonder Woman and everything she's about. The movie, despite being, I almost want to say, objectively fine as a movie, as an adaptation, fails completely on this one notion. But just because you failed doesn't mean you got everything wrong, and there are things this movie does right. Part 3. The characters, for the most part, are really good. I think the characters in this movie, both the actual Wonder Woman characters as well as the OCs, are pretty well written. Let's start with Diana herself. To get it out of the way, I think Gal Gadot does a good job. She looks the part, though I would have preferred someone a bit more muscular, and she acts fine. I think her accent works alright for Diana, and I think Diana being a fish out of water character makes up for most of the failings in her acting, as you can pass those off as Diana literally not knowing how to act in the world of man. Diana is portrayed as capable and smart and kind, and while a bit naive to the world of man, is not a naive person. I think in pretty much every situation, she acts like I would imagine she would, and right as I thought the movie was getting a little grating with how much Diana was being confused after the 50th time she witnessed some atrocity, she finally wised up, realized, hey, this is the way shit is in this place, and got to work. I think there are only two real problems with Diana in this movie. One, I think she was a little too naive with the whole Ares identity thing. She just assumes Ludendorff is Ares based on the one instance of him stopping a peace talk, and when she kills him, and he turns out to not be Ares, she's completely flabbergasted. I feel this would have worked if we saw more of Ludendorff as a present force, like if he was plastered all over newspapers and constantly on the radio, if there was propaganda posters of him, or heck, simply just making him the guy in charge, or at least second or third in command, instead of just one general out of many. Any of these would have made it make much more sense for Diana to zero in on him being Ares, but because we didn't get any of that, it just comes off as contrived for the sake of Diana being gung-ho about killing this one person, so we can then get a twist reveal. The second problem, and what pisses me off instead of just being a general nitpick like that first problem, is that Diana is the daughter of Zeus. I fucking hate it whenever Diana isn't made out of clay in a continuity. Her being the daughter of Zeus, or really the daughter of any male god, again, goes against that original Marston vision that was built into the character. She's sculpted, not born, by a single woman and raised by an island of women. There is no trace of a man in her origin. She's as pure a woman as you can get. There's symbolism in that. Diana secretly being Zeus's daughter is a cute twist in the moment, but utterly backfires afterwards, because instead of being chosen by the goddesses as their messenger to the world of man and a product of all her Amazonian sisters, she's just a Nepo baby, like every Greek hero before her, the child of a god first and foremost. Instead of her own person, she's defined by her lineage, and the Zeus origin ruins Hippolyta too. Instead of Hippolyta hoping and praying for a child before sculpting one herself with her bare hands, proving her self-sufficiency and agency, now she just simply had sex with Zeus. I didn't like the Zeus origin in the New 52, I don't like the Zeus origin here in the DCEU. Christ's sake, I can't even properly enjoy the first gen of DC superhero girls because it has a Zeus origin. You have got me fucked up, Detective Comics. Now, moving on to the supporting characters, all of them are actually really good. I don't think I have a problem with any of them actually. Let's start with Chris Bryant's Steve Trevor, who, aside from potentially being the best Steve Trevor adaptation, might also just be the best Steve Trevor period. Steve Trevor as a character is very interesting to me, mostly because he actually isn't interesting. He's nice and strong of heart and a man of action, but at the end of the day, he loves Diana. That's it. That's his character. You'd think he wouldn't be hard to mess up, but it is possible to mess him up. Sometimes Steve Trevors are too bland, and sometimes they're 2009 animated movie Steve Trevor, who sucks. We don't talk about that guy. But Chris Pine's Steve Trevor just has all of the good qualities without any real negatives that I can point to. The way he deals with all of the crazy shit of Diana's world, while also dealing with all of the crazy shit of the war, is honestly great fun, and every scene he was in got you more and more invested in him, as well as his relationship with Diana and his crew. There was also this theme of time that I really liked with Steve. He had a prized possession, a watch given to him by his father. Not only was this a tool to highlight the difference between the industrialized society of the outside world, where humans are trapped by work and schedules, versus the paradise of Themyscira, where none such things really matter, but it was also a way to show that Steve was beholden to time. He was mortal, with a limited amount of time on Earth, and he sacrificed his already limited time to save others. But, as shown by the watch surviving, Steve ended up being immortal in his own way. His decision of sacrifice would go on to shape events far into the future. He would be remembered, staying alive in a way, inside of people's hearts. This was a fantastic way to do a second type of immortality compared to Diana's actual immortality, which really just, I loved it. I also really loved Steve's crew. Each of his friends had a nice mini arc, and their character traits endeared them to me, and they were all nice commentary on different aspects of the war, like how it takes away dreams, PTSD, and even that just because one side is easier to root for than the other, it doesn't necessarily mean that one can be considered the good guys, since most major superpowers have done and continue to do some pretty messed up shit. I also loved Etta in this movie. I'm fine with how Etta's been characterized recently in the comics, but I'll always enjoy when she's just a fun-loving but still capable girl's girl. Golden Age Etta, even with the excessive amount of weight jokes, Earth 1 Etta, and now Movie Etta are all my favorite interpretations of the character. I also think the few scenes we got of Hippolyta and Antiope were as much as I could have hoped for given their limited time in the movie. As for the villains, overall I'm pretty meh on them. Ludendorff was definitely the weakest one. I honestly really didn't think he needed that many scenes. In fact, I think less scenes and him being hyped up more would have made that end reveal gut punch work a lot better. Now, moving on to Dr. Poison, to be honest, I've never really cared much for Dr. Poison in the comics or other media, and I really didn't care much about her here. Surprisingly though, I think the reason I didn't care much about her in this movie was because we didn't get more screen time with her. I think doing that and getting to know her character better would have also made that Wonder Woman forgives her scene work a lot better. In the scene where Diana forgives her, the taking away of Dr. Poison's prosthetics to show her scarring is supposed to show that she suffered in the past too, and that suffering begets suffering. But it just doesn't feel cathartic when Diana denies her urge to kill, because we as the audience aren't fully presented with the want to see her alive. As far as we've been presented in the movie, Dr. Poison honestly should die. She creates destructive, inhumane chemical weapons, and she actively tried to stop peace. And even if Ares whispered in her ears, it's shown that he didn't actually orchestrate the war itself. He simply put ideas of how to make deadlier weapons into their minds, and their ambition did the rest. And Diana isn't given any real reason not to kill Dr. Poison either, aside from the fact that Ares wants her to do it, and doing what Ares wants her to do is bad. And I'm not saying that Diana should have killed Dr. Poison here. Diana's character in the comics has never been that of a killer, and I think the idea of movie Diana learning to be like comic Diana is a fine idea. But the way it's handled is kind of like the Zeus origin framing at the beginning. Low-key kinda sexist? Instead of the female villain of the film being shown as deserving of empathy in any capacity, she's given zero development and kept alive simply despite the main male villain of Ares, which kinda sucks. Speaking of Ares, I enjoyed him a lot more than I thought I would. He was really fun and really felt like a powerful god. My only real gripe with him is that, like Dr. Poison, I've never really cared for Ares as a villain in the comics or anything else. The movie might have genuinely chosen two of the least interesting Wonder Woman villains to me. Overall, my thoughts on the villains are that the human ones are handled very poorly, but Ares was at least fun. Part 4. The War. The setting of this movie is World War I, and I actually think that's pretty perfect conceptually. The movie, being a period piece, very well could have taken place in World War II, since that's when the original comics take place, and is just normally much more interesting to make a film about. But the deliberate choice of World War I is very inspired. Because it is the war. Steve says it himself. World War I was a turning point. The world, more connected than ever, meant wars would be involving more nations. Science, more advanced than ever, meant weapons would be getting more dangerous than ever, and crueler than ever. Making World War I the event to force Diana off the island to protect mankind from itself and Ares works so incredibly well for a real-life points forward to enter man's world. I absolutely love it, and while I'll always prefer Diana's origin being set in modern day, I think World War I is definitely the next best option. Now, unfortunately, this setting kind of conflicts with the main message of the movie. The message being, at the end, that killing is wrong, and we must end the cycle of violence because all people are deserving of love, or at least care in some capacity. This is not only seen in the sparing of Dr. Poison, but also in the killing of Ludendorff, which Diana spends the whole movie trying to do, only to finally do it and realize the war still doesn't end. The conclusion being Diana's quote at the end, which is that even if they don't deserve sparing or protection, it's not about deserve, it's about what you believe. But this kind of comes off as very disconnected from the rest of the movie, where the people we're supposed to root for keep killing grunts and foot soldiers no problem, but the killing of higher-ups and warmongers is presented as bad and ineffective. Like, damn Diana, I know you started feeling empathy for the war criminal here and all, but maybe you should have started feeling bad before you killed the drafted guy with a wife and 5 kids. And no, I don't think all these foot soldiers are all blameless, but it's just an icky feeling when we spend the movie killing them, but then start sparing the higher-ups and saying killing is objectively bad. Just using the war setting for this message as a whole is so weird, because war is a system. In most stories where we go killing is bad, it's about a single individual, or maybe a few people who do a heinous act and are presented with a question of, oh, does one person deserve the right to be judge, jury, and executioner? Or, oh, is revenge truly what will make the situation right? Those work when they talk about the cycle of violence because a cycle can be clearly seen with less people. War is an entire recursive spiderweb of violence. It just doesn't work the same way. The literal end of Ares is also metaphorical, as it brings the end of the war, and the moment bringing the end of the war is an act of kindness, of saving Dr. Poison. What we're meant to take away from this is that love, not violence, will carve the way to a new world, which, while a very Wonder Woman message, does not come across as well as it could have for this movie. Again, the presenting of war, which is multifaceted in its very nature, means that while the message that killing one person isn't enough to solve everything is correct, it's also true that sparing one person isn't enough either. Ares was a physical character to beat up in the original comics, but the goal of those original comics wasn't just beating him up, it was foiling his plans. Ares, and the war which he represents, is vast. Wonder Woman fought that vast evil by again and again fighting injustices all over the world. She was as much a warrior as she was an ambassador of sorts, a trait which has become focused on more and more as the years progressed. It was several acts of kindness that helped Wonder Woman stop injustice, and it was a constant struggle. Simply ending the movie with killing is wrong period and just be nice and war will go away makes the message just seem incredibly hollow because a subject as complex as war cannot be defeated by something so simple. Part 5. Paradise Found. Alright, I take my interpretations of Themyscira very seriously. It has to be objectively more advanced than mankind, while still remaining clearly classically Greek in foundation, and still having a few behind-the-time stuff, while also having magic as a foundation as well. I think Themyscira is very beautiful in this movie. I love the architecture and the clear blue sea and the immaculate beach, but aside from that, we don't get to see much else of the island aside from that interrogation chamber where the sword and the armor were kept, and those healing pools. We don't get a real sense of what life on Themyscira is like. All the Amazons seem to do is train. We hear about the Amazon scholar Cleo making 12 entire books on sex, but aside from that, we don't know much about Amazonian education. I understand that this is just a 2-hour movie, and we can't spend too much time on Themyscira alone, but the Wonder Woman Bloodlines animated movie is an entire hour shorter than this one, and spends much less time on Themyscira, yet it manages to pack in so much interesting looks and details and background lore. Like, yeah, sure. In Wonder Woman 2017, we get an island paradise with Greek architecture. But what makes it Themyscira? Where's the purple healing ray? They at least have the healing pools, but they're not purple. Why are they riding on horses instead of kangaroos? The one problem with Perez's Themyscira was no kangaroos, and Diana and Steve just leave on a simple sailboat? Nothing more? And where are the megalodons who protect the oceans of Themyscira from invasion in the first place? I understand these may seem like a lot of unnecessary nitpicking, but there are things that make fictional locations what they are. And because this didn't fit anywhere else, why does the lasso of truth compel truth in this movie by causing pain? That's never really been a thing in anything else that I can recall. Just because it's made from Hestia's flames doesn't mean that it literally burns you. Well, sometimes it does, but it doesn't do that to make you tell the truth. It's simple, magical compulsion. You could have showed Steve struggling to fight its influence without making it seem like the Amazons were literally torturing the information out of him. Overall, the movie gets 2.5 jumpas out of 5 on its interpretation of Themyscira. However, while this movie's Themyscira isn't my favorite, I still like how it's contrasted versus the outside world. Themyscira is vibrant and colorful, and the second Diana and Steve leave, they never see another color aside from a blue or yellow filter ever again. And I think my favorite scene in the movie has to be when Diana arrives in London for the first time and immediately starts trashing the place. Like, compared to Themyscira, England must look like a back alley dumpster to her. It's so funny.
Welcome to jolly old London.
It's hideous.
Yeah, it's not for everybody.
Part 6. The End and What Comes Next. Overall, Wonder Woman 2017 is a good film, with some glaring issues as an adaptation that, while they don't lessen the viewing experience of it as a film, still make it a lot less enjoyable as a fan of the character. I'm pleased with the movie, but I'd definitely make a few changes. At the time of writing the script, I've also yet to see its sequel, Wonder Woman 1984, and I don't know if I'll wait until after I finish making this video to do so. Anyway, that's it for me, Friendos and Mendos. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time, and please comment down your thoughts below. Thank you.